Thank you, everybody, for being here. My name is Vanessa Lombardo, and I am the Training and Learning Manager here at Benetech. We are really excited today to provide you with an in-depth demo of both the Bookshare Reader for Web and the Bookshare mobile app. The demo has been previously recorded, and it'll be available to view after our time today, as well as going to be up on the Bookshare website, as well as our YouTube channel. Additionally, we have Anna here from our customer service team to discuss some of the most frequently asked questions from educators, and then we're going to have time for some of your questions. Anna, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna from the customer service team, and I'm here to answer some of your common questions. I've been here for a few years and feel privileged to be here.
Right. Wonderful. That is great. Thank you so much. All right. So we are going to start with a demo. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our summer symposium. My name is Vanessa Lombardo, and I am the Training and Learning Manager here at Bookshare. My primary responsibility is to provide high-quality training materials to our users, as well as those that support them. I am very excited today to provide a demo of our new Bookshare Reader for Web and our new Bookshare mobile app. We are going to have time for questions at the end, so please put them in the Q&A box as we are going along, and we will answer them live during that time. Let's get started. Both the Bookshare Reader for Web and the Bookshare Reader mobile app are free. The Bookshare Reader for Web was launched in the fall of 2022. The Bookshare team took user feedback from our old Bookshare Reader and added new features to this version of our new and improved reading tool. The Bookshare Reader for Web can be accessed on any device that has internet access and is intended to be used in a web browser, such as Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, and the new Microsoft Edge. One point I want to clarify for educators. Educators in Bookshare are called sponsors. A sponsor cannot access current copyrighted materials unless they themselves qualify for Bookshare because they struggle to read standard printed text. Sponsors are able to access freely available books that are out of copyright. Bookshare has a curated list of these books called Free for All. You can find that list by going to www.bookshare.org and searching through the reading lists. This is one way sponsors can experience Bookshare Reader as their students would. To begin using Bookshare Reader for Web, I'm going to log in to www.bookshare.org with my sponsor, username and password, which for this demo is Edward Educator. As a sponsor, I can add students to my organization's account, search for books, and assign books to my students. I can click on the left sidebar of the My Bookshare page and select the Members link. This allows me to see my list of students. Next, I'm going to search for a book to assign to my student, Summer Symposium. There are a variety of ways to search for a book, such as typing in a title, author name, or ISBN number into the search bar. I'm going to search for Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. There is a table that comes up and provides me with books that match my search terms. There is a blue Assign button in the far right column of the table. This Assign button will prompt me to assign this book to one of the students on my organization's account. I am going to assign this book to Summer. Now that the book has been assigned, I will log out of my sponsor account and log in as my student, Summer Symposium, to read this book with the new Bookshare Reader. I am now logged in as the student, Summer Symposium. I see books that have been assigned to me in my Assigned Books tab on the bottom of the screen. I am going to click on the Assigned tab and then on the blue Read Now button on the right side of the screen, and the Bookshare Reader will launch. If your students have used the older version of Bookshare Web Reader, they will notice this user interface looks completely different. It has been streamlined and simplified based on user feedback to make the students' reading experience easeful and enjoyable. Let's start with navigating around the book with the Table of Contents feature located at the bottom left side of the footer. The student can click on any chapter to navigate directly to that point in the text. This is convenient so they can quickly get to the place in the book they want or need to start reading. They can also enter a specific page number to jump directly to that page in the text. Next, let's explore the Settings feature, which is located at the gear icon on the top right side of the header. The first option you will see is the Quick Settings tab. This will allow the student to change a variety of settings quickly and in real time so they can see how the text changes and determine which settings are best for their reading experience. This was a much requested feature, and we are happy to provide it to our members. You will see additional tabs at the top of the Quick Settings dialog box, including audio, text, page, and color. Within each of these tabs, students can fine-tune these settings. Let's move through each one. In the Audio tab, students can change all the audio settings. The Bookshare Reader uses voices that are native to their device, and the drop-down menu will give them the voice options available. They can also play a sample to hear what it will sound like and adjust the speed. They can also choose to have the page numbers voiced out loud, as well as any image descriptions in the book. In the Text tab, the student has options to fine-tune the text size, as well as change the font of the text. They can also choose the amount of space between each letter or character of the words in the text. In the Page tab, they can adjust the display format so that the pages appear side by side or as a long scrolling list. They can adjust the margins and the spacing between each line of the text. Finally, they can choose to have the page numbers displayed or not. Lastly, in the Colors tab, the student can use our preset options or choose to customize exactly which colors they want to use for the background, text, sentence highlighting, and word highlighting. If they would like to revert back to the default settings of the book, they can select the Reset to Default button. Once the student has customized the settings to their preferences, click the X on the top right of the screen, and that will bring them back to the text of the book. Let's get into reading the book. First, if the student wants to have the book read to them using text-to-speech, they can select the Play button located at the center of the footer. They can also click anywhere in the text to start reading from that spot. This is another feature our users asked for, the ability to click anywhere in the text and begin reading. They can press the arrow keys on the right or left side of the Play button to replay backwards or move forward in the text. The last two new features I want to demonstrate are the location icon and the bookmarks icon, both located at the bottom right side of the footer. The location icon will tell the student exactly where they are in the book. The bookmarks feature was also a much requested feature to be part of the new reader tool because students can easily pick up reading where they left off. When the student reaches a point in the text where they want to add a bookmark, they click the bookmark icon and an orange bookmark will appear in the text. To find their bookmarks, they can select the book navigation menu at the bottom left side of the footer and select Bookmarks. This will display all the bookmarks they have in that book, and they can click on the one they want to jump right to that point in the text. That is our new Bookshare Reader for web. Let's move on to exploring the Bookshare Reader mobile app for Apple and Android mobile devices. The mobile app was launched in December of 2022. The app is available in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. One of the great features about the Bookshare Reader tools is that they synchronize your reading place across devices. In other words, if a student starts to read a book in school on a Chromebook or a laptop, and then wants to continue reading at home on a tablet, their reading place will be saved and they can start reading right where they left off. We are going to try this with our book, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume, by logging in as our student, Summer. A note to educators or sponsors, you cannot assign books through the app, but students can access their assigned books via the app. Additionally, students on an organization account must have books assigned to them to be read. If a student has an individual membership, they can access the books they choose and do not need to wait for you to assign the books to them. Once you launch the app on your device, you will be brought to the login screen where the student can enter their same Bookshare username and password. There is no need to create a separate username and password for the app. Enter the information and select Log In. After the student logs in, they are brought to the My Library page, which allows them to search for a book, see a list of their recently read books, see a list of assigned books in the Assigned Books tab, as well as a list of downloaded books and an option to view their profile. When the student selects the book they want to read, the book information page will appear and provide them with a book synopsis and copyright year. They have the option to either download the book for offline reading in the future or select the blue Read Now button to immediately stream the book. If they choose the gray arrow to download the book will show with a downloading status. Once the book is downloaded completely, the download button disappears and they can select the blue Read Now button, which will open the Bookshare Reader. This book is now available for offline viewing. Let's go back to Tales of the Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. And as you can see, it picked up right where we left off. You can see that the reader is structured very similarly to Bookshare Reader for web. They will have access to customized settings to their reading preferences through the gear icon in the top right heading section of the screen. The first settings page is the quick settings for the most used customized features within the Bookshare Reader mobile app. Then each tab across the header will allow them to further customize the audio features, text, page, and color settings. Just like the Bookshare Reader for web, the settings will change in real time so the students can see the settings and determine if they're good for them. To return to the text of the book, they can select the X on the top right side of the heading. The book navigation feature is located on the left side of the footer and allows the student to navigate the book by chapter or page. They can select the chapter they want to read, and the reader will bring them directly to that spot in the text. Finally, the text-to-speech play button is located in the center of the footer. This will allow the text to be read aloud to the student. And they also have the option to fast forward through the text or go backward in the text to reread.
And Mrs. Juicy O. One night my father came home from the office all excited.
To return to the My Library page, click on the back arrow located on the left side of the header. Finally, the student can view their profile by selecting the profile icon on the bottom right side of the footer. The profile is where they can set their language preferences, see what version of the Bookshare Reader app they have, contact our customer support team, and log out of the app. That is our Bookshare Reader for mobile. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the QA box and we will answer them live, as well as have some time for hands-on practice. Thank you. All right, thank you, everyone. I see the QA box and the chat are quite active, which is great. But before we get to those questions, I do want to move into our conversation with Anna. Our customer support team gets many questions from Bookshare members and those that support them, such as educators. So Anna, let's talk about some of the most frequently asked Bookshare questions. The first question is around students who qualify for Bookshare. We operate under the U.S. copyright law exemption, which states that anyone who has difficulty reading standard print could use Bookshare. So does a student need to have a 504 plan or an IEP to be a Bookshare member?
No, a student does not have to have an IEP or a 504. It's not required to qualify for Bookshare. And we don't need those documents to be submitted to us. Bookshare is available to individuals with a qualifying, a reading or a perceptual disability, and as well as a visual impairment or physical disability. So this includes students with a learning disability such as dyslexia, dysgraphia that prevents them from reading a standard book, and students who are blind or have visual impairments. Students who cannot hold a book in a standard way qualify. Additionally, students who are receiving services through RTI or MTSS may qualify. There's additional information about this on our website. All right, great. And I did just put a link in the chat regarding the qualifications. And I know there's a lot of information on our website, so that is a great place to go. Anna, I also want to talk about competent authorities, right, as stated in the copyright law. Can you explain a little bit about that? Sure. A competent authority is a professional that has credentials in the fields of disability services, education, medicine, or psychology. There are many professionals at the school that can sign as a competent authority, such as AT specialists, learning disability specialists, special education teachers, school librarians, school psychologists, clinical psychologists with a background in learning disabilities, and medical practitioners such as family doctors, psychiatrists, or even administrative staff who have access to students' files. There's actually a list of competent authorities on the same page on our website. This is not exhaustive. It could be a professional who has firsthand knowledge of the students. Great. So someone who's working closely with them, right, and understanding their needs. All right. That is great. Exactly. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I know you get that question a lot, so I'm glad we had some time to an opportunity to answer that. All right, great. So let's move on to the second question. So there are two kinds of Bookshare accounts. So there's an organizational account and then an individual account. Can you explain the difference between the two? Sure. Many people do get confused with those. And an organizational account is an account that's set up by the school or the school district or an organization. And in Bookshare, we call our educators who are on these accounts sponsors. And sponsors on these accounts are able to add and remove students. They can create the usernames and passwords or change the passwords for students. And they also assign books or remove books from students' lists. On an organizational account, students can only access the books that have been assigned to them. And therefore, the student has to wait until the book is assigned to them to start reading. On an organizational account, not only the sponsors, but there's also a primary contact on this account, and each account has only one primary contact. And the primary contact is also a sponsor. They just have a little bit more additional access. All other staff, faculty, or staff from schools and organizations are considered sponsors. They all share the same organizational membership account, but each of them have their own unique login to log in. So there is no limit on the amount of sponsors that can be on the account. And the sponsors then can add and remove their own students, add or remove other sponsors. So they can add teachers on there or their other teachers. And they can also add or remove books and edit the students' profiles. For public schools, sponsors can log in and qualify students to the organizational account with no proof of disability document required. So they just log into Bookshare with their unique username, and then they add the student as a member. I do want to explain that the proof of disability, or as we refer to as the POD form, is a 2-page document that is required for individuals. So if the person wants to open up an individual account, they have to submit that form. An example is a student who's homeschooled or an individual who's no longer in school. That's when a POD form is required for that individual membership. We all talk about individual memberships next.
All right, that's great. So, right, so the organizational membership, again, they can just be added by that competent authority and be up and running. So that's great. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that individual membership account.
Sure. The individual membership is an individual. So the student would have their own account, their own login to be able to access their account. So a student who's already a part of an organizational account can also have an individual membership, and they can link those accounts. A teacher or a sponsor on these accounts can initiate that individual membership process for the student who's already on their roster. With an individual membership account, students can browse and access books independently. They don't have to have the books assigned to them. Once the individual membership account is approved, it's always approved. So when the student leaves that school, if maybe they're a senior and they're going to college, they will take that Bookshare account with them, and they'll continue to have access to their individual account, and they don't need to provide documentation again to qualify for Bookshare. And to be clear, students can have both an organizational and a membership, an individual membership account. Just when the students leave the school, the sponsors on the account should remove those students from their roster so that they then will just have their own individual account access.
Absolutely. That is great. And I did also put in the chat, and I'm just going to put in one more link in regard to linking those two accounts to make sure that the student has everything that they need and that they're all set up. So that is great. Wonderful. It's good to know that they can have both options depending on what is going to best suit the student.
Right.
All right, great. So let's move on to question number 3. So the next most frequently asked question is about why educators cannot access copyright books. So we talked a little bit about this in the video, but maybe we could expand a little bit. Why can't educators access copyrighted materials?
Most educators are not the qualifying individual. If they happen to qualify, they can apply for their own individual membership. However, sponsors can still download the Word file of a book in order to review the text of the book if they needed to prepare for some lesson or for the student. To access copyrighted materials, you have to qualify for Bookshare. So anyone who doesn't qualify can only access the freely available material that we have in our library. There are books out there out of copyright, and Bookshare has a curated list of these titles, which you will put here in the chat for you. There's currently 209 titles on this list, and they include classics from F. Scott Fitzgerald and Laura Wilder, and titles such as The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. There's also a freely available children's book list and freely available books for upskilling or learning a new skill. In total, there are about 10,000 or more books that are in our freely available collection.
Oh, that's really great to know, because especially with educators wanting to kind of get a sense from the students or from the students' perspective, you know, how to use Bookshare. So it is really great to know that there is an option for that. And like you mentioned, I did put a couple links in the chat regarding those lists. And like the video said, you can go to bookshare.org. Click browse, and then the special collections freely available. One other point too, which I just wanted to mention, is that sometimes educators will ask us, you know, well, how do we know what's in the collection? So anyone can go to bookshare.org and browse for the books. The only thing you won't be able to do unless you are logged in is to actually access the books, download them, but you can see, you know, what we have in the collection. And on the video, as we mentioned, there's the synopsis, the copyright year, the ISBN numbers, you know, making sure that you have the correct copy. So freely available, or again, just kind of browsing through the collection to see what we have, which is great. All right, wonderful. Okay, so our last question here. We hear this one often too, which is Bookshare only for students in K through 12 education? So Anna, can you give us a little more information about that?
Yeah, that's something that we get asked a lot. Bookshare is available to anyone, no matter of age, who's eligible for Bookshare under U.S. copyright law. So it could be students in K through 12, but it can be students that are in college, in universities, technical workforce training, or other institutions that offer ongoing training. But they don't have to be in school to have Bookshare. It could be someone who's no longer in school that can use Bookshare. So you ask, can a student in a vocational program use Bookshare? Yes, they can. An adult who wants to read for pleasure, yes, they can get access as long as they qualify. Those in the universities, they qualify. If they qualify, they also have access, and it doesn't matter on age. Additionally, Bookshare has relationships with the National Library Service libraries, which are focused on supporting individuals with disabilities. And sometimes the NLS library will pay for their patrons' memberships. So while they're a student, the account is free. Otherwise, if they're not a student or a patron of the NLS that is a partner of ours, they do have to pay $79.99 a year for a Bookshare membership. It's an annual membership that they get. And since we work directly with publishers and adding books into our library, we often get books of the same that are released on the same day, so there's no waiting. And additionally, we have a one-to-many borrowing structure, meaning if there's 1,000 students that need a book and want to borrow that same book, they can. We don't have a limit on the digital copies that are out there in our collection.
All right, that's great, wonderful, and good to know that it does, range in age in terms of the qualification, and then looking at the, what kind of partnership or K through 12. There was a question in the chat about secondary, post-secondary students, and working with the Student Services Office, Disability Services Office, at the different colleges, universities, vocational schools. So that's really, really great. Now, Anna, let's say that someone does have a question, they want to contact customer support. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, our customer service team or customer support team is here Monday through Friday. You can either contact us through the contact page on our website, you can email us, or you can call us directly. Our number is on the contact page on our website. Then we are here from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific time.
Okay. Oh, that's great. And I know that those hours had been extended to try to reach the continent, well, also all the United States, all the different time zones.
Yes.
But in the chat, I did put that contact us and the phone number as well. So that is really great. Again, if people have questions, then they can reach out directly. The other thing, of course, is we do have a very robust help center. The customer service team does work with that as well. I'm going to go ahead and put that in the chat. So the help center is a place where there are a list again of the frequently asked questions with the answers. There is also a search where you can go ahead and take a look and see if there is a question or an answer to your question there. And the other thing that I wanted to add into the chat is that Bookshare also has a very robust training and learning center. So really those two things work together. Again, going on to bookshare.org, and in that top heading or the banner, you'll see Help Center, and then a drop down under that is the Learning Center. So within the Learning Center, there are many videos, different pieces of information listed on there, resources in different languages, and really trying to make sure that we are providing as much information as possible to make Bookshare use as easy as possible. So again, those are all in the chat, so certainly encourage you to take a look at those. All right, so now I want to go through the chat. I did see a couple of questions, so there is some information in there, some questions around the font, and looking at post-secondary, as we mentioned. So there's a question from Audra: would a student who is learning English be able to use Bookshare? So that is not something that would qualify the student automatically. However, if they do have difficulty reading in terms of a learning or a physical or visual impairment as well. But Anna, I'm curious, I'm sure you must get that question in terms of students who, English is not their first language, and Bookshare use. So would you have any additional information just from the customer service team perspective?
Yeah, English language learners are not automatic qualifiers unless they do have a qualifying disability. But we do encourage that they can still create a Bookshare account, and they still have access to books that they can practice using with the free access to the open source books that we have in our collection. So that's something that we do suggest if they're using it to practice. Of course, it doesn't have every book that they may need, but it is available.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. And there are Bookshare books in many different languages as well. So potentially that work, once if the student, again, as Anna mentioned, qualifies, there are books in a variety of languages, because Bookshare is domestic in terms of the United States, but it's also global, and we work in several different countries as well. And we have memberships with different libraries in different countries. All right, great. Just looking through the chat. So Bruce asked a question about web reader. Is the data on the last page that is read stored locally? And so that is my understanding. I definitely can do a double check on that in regard to our engineering team. Anna, I was not sure. I know you get a lot of different questions and some of them are very technical. But in terms of the web reader and the data that's saved, being that it's stored locally on the machine or over the network, any insight in regard to that? Do you get those types of questions also in customer service team?
We do. And we also have an advanced tech support that if somebody can't answer, they will transfer you to the advanced tech support. And yes, those are usually stored in the local device.
All right, wonderful. That is great. Thank you so much. Let's just see here as we're moving through. So Gracie asked a question about how would a university know that a student has graduated high school and does have an existing Bookshare account? Anna, I'm sure, again, you do get this question. I would toss it to you first. I have an idea, but I want to make sure that I pass that to you. How would a university know if a student has graduated and does have an existing Bookshare account?
Well, this is where the individual membership is important, because if a student already has an individual membership, they graduate high school, they're an adult mostly at that point, they just take their account with them. The university or college doesn't need to know that they have an individual membership or a Bookshare membership, because yes, they can still search textbooks that the school does have. If that textbook is not available in our collection, that individual now can go ahead and request the textbook for school, and they still have free access because they are students. But no one at the college will manage the account, like an organizational account, like the K through 12 system does. So at the college level, it is a little bit different. It's mostly an individual account. Having said that, there are colleges that do have in their student disability services offices, some of them do have Bookshare accounts, but they don't assign books. Most of them, they just will create the account and then add the student to qualify them. And then they'll initiate an individual membership for them. But those books no longer have to be assigned, especially when they're at the college level, not even the textbooks.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And of course, students at any age, we want to encourage them to advocate for themselves, have agency, certainly. And like you said, kind of moving from K-12 into that post-secondary university environment, we do want to make sure that they have access to Bookshare, but also can initiate some of that as well. Anna, you mentioned something that is also probably, my guess would be a frequently asked questions in regard to requesting books. I know we have a couple of resources and I'm going to look for one and throw it in the chat, but could you talk a little bit about requesting books when you look for a book and it's not in the Bookshare catalog?
Sure. So if you're looking for a book and it's not in the catalog, there is a book request in our website where the sponsor needs to be logged in and they can submit a book request. It does take several weeks to get that book available. And when we are slow, such as now, book request may get a little bit, make it process a little bit faster. But when back to school season comes, which is not that far away, there can be a little bit a longer delay because everyone's asking for books. And so if you know what your student needs ahead of time, request it as soon as you can.
Absolutely. And the wait time, just in regard to if we do have a relationship with that publisher, let's say we are already under contract with them. We have the collections development team, of course, that handles all of that, ingesting all the content and working with the publishers. But does that matter if we already do have a relationship with the publisher? Can we get it any faster, or is it pretty much, it could be a few weeks waiting time? How does that kind of work?
It comes down to the relationship that we have with the publisher, and that is something that our collections development team has. I don't know what the time frame is versus coming directly from a publisher versus it being scanned into our system, but it is faster if it comes from a publisher, but I just couldn't give a time frame.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, just curious. All right, great. And I did put a link in there in regard to requesting a book. There's a quick video in there, and then the actual form itself that you can list. One of the things just working with the content team is that if you can be as specific as possible with the book, especially the ISBN number, that does help them in regard to, again, locating the book, seeing how quickly they can get it. As Anna had mentioned, it does take a little bit of time. And so if you can be as specific as possible when requesting it, that helps them on their end, to get it as soon as they're able. All right, great. Let's see. I'm just looking again through the chat. So Alice, you had mentioned, an institutional membership at a community college. You are able to access, all the books, the textbooks as well. So yes, so this is not something that has changed. A lot of the inner workings and the policies, in terms of, again, we operate under the copyright law, not IDEA or any other, educational law. So certainly none of that has changed. Let's see. Oh, okay. So Jen asked, is there a direct link or a download for a proof of disability form to get a student to qualify for an individual membership? So Anna, could you talk a little bit about that? If the student already has an organizational membership, how do they move them into that individual membership?
So as a sponsor, if your student is on that list, your member is on your roster, there's actually a way to do it from that page where you will check the box next to their name and go to the bottom, and you were going to add an individual membership. So you can do it online without having to do a form if you're the sponsor on the account and your student is either already on the sponsor, on the members list, or you can add them and then add the individual membership. That avoids having to do a proof of disability form. So we do suggest, or we encourage that, especially the older students in high school, that teachers or sponsors go in there and assign them or initiate that process for them to get their own individual account, because then they don't have to do paperwork later on. If they leave high school and don't have an individual account, then they go to college, then it's a little bit more of a hassle for them having someone sign a form from them. So we encourage that sponsors create that process online.
Absolutely. That's great. And same thing, I did put a link in the chat regarding that, just to give a little more information. So that is great. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much, Bruce. I see your answers in here. It's really, really helpful. Frida had asked, as a sponsor, I can assign copyrighted materials. And yes, as Bruce had mentioned, that really is the role of the sponsor. When the student has an organizational membership and they do have to wait for someone to assign the books to them, the sponsor's role is to assign the books. And as Anna had mentioned, certainly if there is a book that is not in the collection, requesting it, trying to do that as soon as possible, so that way we can make sure that we get it on or as quickly as possible. So thank you so much. That is really, really great. So Janice asked, can you clarify the comment about the students in RTI, so response to intervention, for students struggling? So the whole question is, Can you clarify your comment on students in RTI who may qualify for Bookshare? For students struggling to decode print materials in RTI and not currently identify with a disability, would this student qualify? And so the answer is yes, they could qualify. You do not, as we said in that very first question, so we don't need a 504, or the student does not need to have a 504 plan or an IEP. None of those documents ever get sent to us. That is not something that we do. It really is relying on you as the competent authority, right? As the person with intimate knowledge of the student. So if they're in RTI or multi-level tiers of support, then they have been identified as struggling in terms of perhaps decoding, as you had mentioned, and other difficulties with print materials. And so really, one of the major things about Bookshare that I always like to mention is that Bookshare is an accommodation, right? It is giving students accessible materials in an alternative format. And one of the sessions later on today, actually, Bruce, is part of that panel. We're going to be talking all about that and plus more, and some of the UDL groups that we have speaking today as well, really looking at this as this is a tool for access. So this Bookshare is not a teaching tool per se in terms of an Orton Gillingham type of approach or anything like that. We are giving access to students, individuals, not just students, as we talked about, in an alternative format and making them be able to read in ways that work for them. But again, it goes back to that competent authority, the person who's working closely with the student to be able to recognize that they are struggling and that potentially this is one accommodation that could be beneficial to them. So thank you for that question. And like we said, but that's our top most frequently asked questions is in terms of the qualifications. But that is great. Okay, looking again through the chat here. So Noelia, you asked a question, as an accessibility coordinator, we assist with the signing books. Can we still find their account? So I'm thinking that this is going back to that question of at a university level or again, out of high school, would someone be able to find an account? And so as Anna had mentioned, it is up to the student, to be able to share that information. They have that individual membership, hopefully. And as Anna had mentioned, this is one thing in terms of transition planning, and honestly, transition at any age in K-12, but certainly as they're, coming out of that K-12 system, making sure that this is one of the things, if they really do find Bookshare to be, beneficial to them, that individual membership is set up for them. That way, again, it's one less thing. They're able to take that, with them and continue using the service. Dee Dee, Oh, yes.
Sorry, I was going to add to that.
Go ahead,
If you're looking for a student and you can't find them in the system with their name or on your account, because sometimes there are multiple accounts and it makes it challenging, just contact us because we can search the database for you if needed. So that's not a problem.
Sure. No, absolutely. I was going to ask you, Ed, about this one from Dee Dee. How do we know if a K-12 student already has an account? So similarly, right, they can contact customer service, either call or email, and you would be able to at least verify if they do or do not. Is that correct?
Most of the time, yes. It just depends on the spelling of the names and how the account was created, but yes.
Sure. Yes. No, sometimes there are nuances for sure. All right. Wonderful. This is great. All righty. We're getting close to the end of our time here. I'm just looking through the chat again. Okay, that's great. Okay, so Eileen, you asked a question. Is there a way that the settings can be preset for a student? I have a student who will get stuck clicking everywhere for fun, get a little lost, not be able to read. I have heard this before, Anna. I am curious if you have heard this question and if you have thoughts about, a preset settings for the students.
I have not had that question, and I don't think that there's a preset that we can set up on the account that would do anything, to keep the student focused that I'm aware of.
Right. So I am thinking the same thing. I have heard this question before, and that is the answer for myself. One thing that I'm thinking about, just putting my AT specialist hat on, especially in iOS. Now I'm blanking if it's on Android. I'm just pulling this based on some older information. The guided access or restricting a student. So if you're on an iOS device and you enact that in the accessibility features, you can create basically a blank spot. So that gear icon that they would go to, once you set up the settings with the student, you can enable that. And I will look for additional information. If I could find it quick, and I'll stick it in the chat. But it essentially disables, it kind of makes a blank spot on that screen. And so they will not be able to get back into the gear icon and change the settings. That is not a Bookshare thing. That's an accessibility feature, certainly in iOS devices. And like I said, in Android, I think they have something similar, but apologies, I don't know 100%, but that might be something, and as with any device, or rather any program, the accessibility features that are built into all the devices that we are using every day are very, very powerful. And so there might be something there to take a look at that. But through Bookshare itself, no, that is, as far as I understand it, that is not a feature. Okay, great. All right, here. I know we're getting close to the end of our time, and I really, really appreciate all of the questions. And I know obviously you are looking through the chat too. If there is any question that stands out to you, Anna, specifically, in our last couple of minutes here, we can certainly feel free to jump in and ask that question.
The ones I had seen, you had answered.
Okay, no, that's fine. Talking about how to share the documents, SharePoint, and so there was some information around Google Drive. And certainly there is lots of different ways to access the Bookshare books. And one other thing, again, just as we're scrolling through here, there are a lot of other third-party apps. So obviously we talked about the Bookshare tools, but we are very happy to have our AT partners and the other tools that you can use to read Bookshare books. So Dolphin Easy Reader, Voice Dream Reader, and again, adding the books, the text version of the books onto Google Drive, SharePoint, Dropbox, whatever your school is using. The ultimate goal is to get the students to read the books, right? To have access to the documents and the texts that are critical for them to learn and to achieve their goals and excel. So whatever way is most beneficial for the student, we are very happy. Like I said, we have our own tools. We partner with many third-party apps, software tools, companies, and that is really, really great. Because again, it gives students or individuals choice, and be able to advocate and give some agency, which is really, really wonderful. All right, great. Just one other question, or well, just to reiterate. So Gracie, you mentioned, can a student be able to review the books, such as those that have been assigned to students? So as we had mentioned before, you cannot do it as the educator unless you yourself qualify for Bookshare. You can obviously search for the book. You can see the copyright information, the ISBN number, and things like that. If it is copyrighted material, and again, that goes back to the copyright law, the agreements that we have with the publishers, and working through those parameters. So just to reiterate that. So thank you for that question.
There's a question from Lourdes Fernandez about she's a sponsor. It says, I'm the sponsor for my campus on an elementary school, and we have students that have graduated onto middle school. Would it be okay to remove them? So this sometimes can be tricky. We don't require that the school district establishes the account. And sometimes within a district, there's multiple schools and there are multiple Bookshare accounts. And so if you know that the middle school already has a Bookshare account, they've left your school, you can remove them from your account. It's always good to let the student know that if their next school, whoever they're working with, the teachers, that they talk about Bookshare or mention that they had a Bookshare account. Once you remove them, they've been removed. But if you're in an elementary school and your student is in the elementary school and they go on to middle school, once you remove them, they no longer have that Bookshare account, but they still have to have books assigned to them. So if they're at the middle school and you're not there working with them or on that account, they have to have someone else at the middle school in their Bookshare account assign the book to them. So it's best to remove them from your account and have the next school add them as a member to their organization account. Some school districts do have just one account across all schools, but it's not the same everywhere. It's because probably of the amount of schools within a district. So
absolutely. No, that is great. Thank you so much, Anna, for that. And then just one more thing, because this has been brought up a bunch. This is in regard to STEM, Math ML updates. Alice asked this question: are there any updates on the math conversion of materials to Math ML for students who need accessible math? And so actually the last session today, Katie Beeler from our engineering team is going to be going over some of the updates and things that they're working toward in terms of Math ML. So if you are able to stick around for that last session of the day, there'll be lots of different updates in regard to what is upcoming with the Bookshare tools of suites and additional features. Wonderful. All right. Well, we are at time, a minute or two over. Anna, did you have any just last closing comments or any other questions that you can think of right now?
yes, just one. If you have a student who's going to be leaving your school and you don't know that at their next school they're going to have Bookshare, we always encourage that you establish that individual membership account for them. That way, wherever they go, they'll have their own account and you don't have to worry if they have Bookshare. And that's why we encourage the individual membership, even if they're on your organization, to give them that, because then they'll have the power to do it on their own. Obviously, for some younger students, it may not work, but at any time, if you have questions or concerns, you're not sure, we're here to help you, be it whatever it is. So that's it.
Wonderful. All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Anna. We really appreciate all your insight.
Thank you.
And understanding from the customer support team. Like we said, please, or Anna mentioned, please reach out to them. Thank you all so much. I'm going to end this meeting. You'll be back in the lobby. We'll take a brief break and then we'll head into our next session. Thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Bye.